All right, let's just dive right into this. Have you ever stopped to wonder why we humans, arguably the most dominant species on the planet, can still feel this intense, literal physical distress over something as simple as being left out of a conversation? Well, in today's Explainer, we're going to look at human evolution through a totally different lens. We're exploring how surviving at our ancestral past meant we had to adapt to two completely distinct types of threats. And mastering both of these, it literally shaped the very biology of our brains and bodies. So think about this stark contrast for a second. What does a Paleolithic hunter-gatherer who's literally out there dodging predators have in common with a teenager today who's just feeling completely ignored on a group chat? I know it sounds wild, but the surprising answer is that their biological alarm systems are firing in the exact same way. Today, we're bridging the gap between ancient paleodemography, which is just the study of physical survival and lifespan, and modern evolutionary social psychology. We're going to see exactly how ancient physical survival and the very modern anxiety of digital ostracism are really just two sides of the exact same evolutionary coin. Here's a quick roadmap for this explainer. First, the evolution of survival. Second, chasing a longer life. Third, the threat of social death. Fourth, wired for connection. And finally, our evolutionary future. Let's get right into it. Section 1, the evolution of survival, the dual pillars. Okay, so to really understand our history, we have to recognize that our ancestors were constantly balancing two critical life or death tasks. They had to outlast physical threats, we're talking predators, freezing weather, brutal diseases, while simultaneously maintaining their social belonging within the pack. You absolutely could not have one without the other. But let's start with that physical pillar. When researchers look at the evolutionary record, a really key metric they use is maximum lifespan. This is basically just the highest age at death ever observed in individuals of a specific population. And among the entire hominidae family, humans are the longest-lived species, by far. For context, while chimpanzees might reach about 53 years old, modern humans boast a maximum lifespan of 85-plus years. So why do we outlive other primates so dramatically? Well, the research points to our slow growth rate, our unusually large brain size, and our incredible knack for adapting our environments to whatever conditions get thrown at us. But make no mistake, reaching that 85-year mark, that was a brutal, hard-fought journey. Moving on to Section 2, chasing a longer life, escaping physical threats. Way back in the lower Paleolithic era, early hominins like Homo habilis actually had a pretty decent lifespan of around 52 to 56 years. But then, as we transition into the Neolithic era, which is when humans stopped wandering around and actually settled down into agricultural societies, something totally counterintuitive happens. Life expectancy absolutely plummets down to just 20 to 33 years. You might be thinking, why? Well, settling down meant suddenly living in super close quarters with livestock and, frankly, our own waste. This caused infectious diseases like malaria and tuberculosis to just skyrocket. It wasn't until the Bronze Age that things slowly, painfully, started climbing back up to the 30 to 35-year range. Fast forward to today, in the modern 21st century, and the global average has just boomed all the way up to 66 years. So the real question is, how did we achieve that massive, incredible leap? Well, there are basically four main factors that allowed our ancestors to escape early death. First, we eventually optimized our exit from the hunter-gatherer lifestyle. We learned how to build better, more permanent shelters and establish much safer communities. Second, we fundamentally changed our diets. Specifically, we started cooking meat, which crucially killed off dangerous bacteria. Third, we drastically decreased infant and child mortality through significantly better hygiene and maternal care. And fourth, of course, the medical miracles. Things like Edward Jenner discovering the very first vaccine in 1796 and Alexander Fleming discovering penicillin in 1928. These breakthroughs finally, decisively neutralized the bacterial infections that had quite literally been hunting us for millennia. This rapid medical and technological boom changed our physical survival in the absolute blink of an eye. Take Turkey, for example. From 1960 to 2019, the average life expectancy there skyrocketed from just 51.7 years to 77.7 years. That happened in less than a single human lifetime. It's incredible. We have, for all intents and purposes, conquered the physical pillar of survival. Which brings us to Section 3, the threat of social death, survival in the pack. Here's the thing, though. A long physical life was absolutely 100% impossible without the protection of the group. To really grasp this, we need to talk about ostracism, the act of being excluded and ignored. Now, in modern times, being ostracized might just mean losing touch with some friends or having a bad day at school. But in our evolutionary past, those hunter-gatherer environments were utterly unforgiving. If your group decided to kick you out, you instantly lost access to shared food, you lost your safety in numbers against predators, and you lost your shelter. Ostracism wasn't just a bruised ego back then. Historically, it literally equated to social death. It completely severed the physical, tangible connections that were necessary to keep you breathing. Section 4, Wired for Connection, the Neuroscience of Pain. Because the threat of this social death was so incredibly lethal, our brains evolved to notice it immediately. And I mean instantly. Neuroscientists have discovered something absolutely fascinating called pain overlap theory. It turns out both a physical injury, like snapping a bone in your leg, and a social injury, like being deeply rejected, activate the exact same region of your brain. It's called the dorsal anterior cingulate cortex, or the DACC for short. This overlap in our neural wiring is so real, so intensely biological, that studies actually show taking a regular everyday dose of acetaminophen, like a Tylenol, can physically numb the emotional distress of social rejection. Crazy, right? But there is one really dark difference here. Social pain is uniquely cruel, because unlike physical pain, it can be vividly re-experienced just by simply remembering it. To ground all this clinical data in some raw, actual human emotion, researchers once asked study participants to recall an old social injury. One person shared this memory. I was in the 8th grade, and 5 of my best friends, for no knowledgeable reason, drew a very mean and hateful picture of me. They then handed it to me with the whole class in the cafeteria watching and laughing. It was the worst betrayal I have ever felt. Now, here is the kicker. When this participant wrote down this specific memory years and years later, their brain registered current active pain on standard clinical pain scales. Physical pain fades from our memory, but social pain, it echoes. Because the evolutionary stakes were life or death, humans developed this incredibly crude, highly sensitive ostracism detection system. Researchers refer to it as the smoke detector principle. Think about it. It's way better for your internal alarm to go off falsely than to sleep through a real fire, right? As a result, our bodies react with deep, genuine distress to even the most minimal social cues. We're talking about a simple lack of eye contact from a stranger on the street, or a slight lag time in getting a text message reply, or, get this, even being excluded in a virtual game that you know is being run entirely by a computer program. Amazingly enough, studies even show it hurts us when we are rejected by despised outgroups like the Ku Klux Klan. Your brain literally does not care who is rejecting you. It just instinctively screams, you are separated from the pack, you are in danger. And finally, Section 5, our evolutionary future, the modern paradox. So how exactly does this ancient biological wiring clash with the incredibly safe modern reality we live in today? Well, physically speaking, countries like Japan, Switzerland, and Spain are projected to push maximum average life expectancies into the 90 to 95-year range by the end of this century. We are living in an era of just unprecedented physical safety and longevity. The literal predator outside the cave, it's been entirely defeated. But here is the ultimate modern paradox. While we are living longer than ever before, we are often living farther apart from each other. And chronic social isolation, it still triggers that ancient, deep-seated survival panic. Studies on socially isolated humans and even animal models like prairie voles show that chronic exclusion actually mimics physical illness in the body. It jacks up our stress hormones, it disrupts our cardiac function, and it causes learned helplessness. We might very well have a 95-year lifespan ahead of us, but if we are chronically isolated, our Paleolithic brains are just going to keep hitting that panic button, deteriorating our health right from the inside out. So I really want to leave you all with this provocative thought to chew on. If human ingenuity and modern medicine allowed us to conquer our physical threats, effectively doubling our life expectancy and paving the way for us to routinely live to 100, how are we going to evolve, adapt, or build our societies to cure the ancient, lingering pain of a socially disconnected world? We've already mastered that first pillar of survival. Now it's time to master the second. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the world around you.